Why do many of us as women feel shame after a private moment of self-exploration? Not relaxation, not calm, not wow, I feel really good, but shame. After the impulse passes, the room goes quiet, your heartbeat slowly settles, and right then, your mind suddenly feels like it drops into some kind of emotional space, a sense of emptiness, self-blame, even self-disgust. You lie in the dark and you can't help but wonder, is there something wrong with me? Am I a bad person? If you've ever had thoughts like this, take a breath for a moment. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, and it doesn't mean you did something wrong, because that suffocating sense of guilt is in many ways a kind of illusion. Part of it comes from biological misinterpretations in the brain, and part of it comes from thousands of years of cultural conditioning. Welcome to my channel. I'm Yo-Yo. Today we're talking about something many women experience, but very few people openly discuss. Let's start with the body. After a moment of private intimacy with ourselves, what actually happens inside us? In medical and sex psychology research, there's a term used to describe this sudden emotional drop. It's called postcoital dysphoria, often abbreviated as PCD. Some sources also refer to it as postcoital tristesse. It describes a state where, after what was otherwise a pleasurable or intimate experience, a person suddenly feels sadness, emptiness, anxiety, irritability, or even the urge to cry. For a long time, discussions around this state were mostly focused on men, but in reality, women experience this emotional crash as well. For some women, it shows up as sadness or emptiness. For others, it can feel like panic, regret, or sudden tears. This doesn't mean there is anything psychologically wrong with you. It's simply the brain going through a chemical roller coaster. During self-exploration, the brain releases large amounts of dopamine. Many people think dopamine is the happiness chemical, but it isn't exactly happiness. Dopamine is more like the chemical of wanting. It creates anticipation. It creates focus. It keeps your brain chasing the peak. But there's something most people don't think about. Once you reach that peak, dopamine can drop quickly, like an elevator suddenly going down. You can think of it like this. The last time you really wanted a big piece of chocolate cake, before eating it, your brain was excited, eagerly anticipating the first bite. But after you finish the last bite, something shifts. A sense of emptiness, maybe even a bit of regret. That's the crash. It happens because the brain's reward system rises to a peak and then falls. A similar process can happen after self-exploration. Your brain isn't broken. It's just that the chemistry in your body is shifting. But for women, dopamine is only part of the story. After climax, the brain also releases another hormone called prolactin. Its role is to gently bring the body back into a calm state. It signals, all right, that's enough, time to power down. But sometimes it's not very emotionally subtle. When prolactin rises suddenly, some people may feel tired, emotionally exposed, sensitive, or low. So the post-climax drop isn't a moral crisis. It's simply an emotional shift that happens when the body moves from a high arousal state back into calm. But the real question is, if this is only a biological response, why do we feel shame afterward? Why don't we simply think, oh, I'm just tired, my body is recovering, I'll drink some water and move on with my day? Why does the mind jump directly to, did I do something wrong? To answer that, we need to look at history. Biology explains the emptiness, but culture explains the shame. For thousands of years within patriarchal cultures and traditional moral frameworks, the female body has often been treated as a form of property. It has been seen as a tool for reproduction. Moral authorities throughout history have quietly written an invisible rule into society. A woman's body is for childbirth. It is for pleasing a partner, but it is not supposed to exist simply for her own pleasure. Think about how absurd this double standard is. When boys explore their bodies, people often turn a blind eye. It's even seen as part of growing up. A simple boys will be boys seems to explain everything, but girls... For a long time, female desire was not seen as natural human behavior. For example, in the Victorian era, women's emotions, desires, and physical responses were often labeled under terms like hysteria. In other words, many normal physiological and emotional reactions were interpreted as something is wrong with the woman. You might think, but we live in the 21st century now. I wasn't born in the Victorian era. That's true, but many beliefs are passed down through generations. You can think back to what sex education looked like when we were younger. In my own experience, teachers didn't really teach it. They just told us to read the textbook ourselves. We grow up with a serious lack of education in this area. No one told me, your body is beautiful. Feeling pleasure in your body is normal. No one. Not once. Because we weren't properly taught, many girls end up exploring everything in the dark. We secretly search online, we watch films and media, we try to understand intimacy and what is normal through those sources. For many people, their first exposure to sexuality actually comes from the internet or media. But the problem is, a lot of that content is not created for women. The women in it are always sexy, always skilled, always fully composed. Even pleasure looks like performance. So when you are alone in your room, going through something very normal, very human, and sometimes even a little awkward, it naturally doesn't look like what you see on screen. And when prolactin floods your system afterward, your subconscious mind starts connecting the wrong dots. It says, "We did something that shouldn't be seen. This doesn't look like what I saw in movies. And now I suddenly feel sad. So I must have done something wrong." But that conclusion isn't necessarily true. The shame we feel is not a moral flaw. It is the combination of an ancient cultural script and a perfectly normal hormonal shift. So how do we break that script and stop feeling ashamed? Next time, when you finish a private moment with yourself and that familiar wave of guilt starts to rise again, don't rush to shame yourself. Pause for a moment and tell yourself, this is just my body returning to balance. This is an emotional drop. This is completely normal. Understanding your body, feeling your emotions, allowing yourself to experience pleasure. These are all deeply human things. You don't need to feel ashamed of them, and you don't need to immediately reject yourself as if you've done something wrong. If this video made you realize for the first time, there is nothing wrong with me, then maybe that alone is already meaningful. And if you'd like to, you can also like the video or subscribe to the channel. I'm Yo-Yo. See you next time.